Today, I'm very excited to tell you about an article where I am a co-author of this article. And the reason why I'm particularly excited about this article is because it's my very first article, scientific article that's published, which is on vagus nerve. So very, very proud of this achievement. So of course, I'm going to tell you about it. And the cool thing is that this article was written for the company that is sponsoring me. So by the way, this video is also sponsored by the company that produces vagus nerve activation devices, Nurosym. And this article was co-written by one of the employees of the company as well, one of the engineers. What's also very cool is that this person is also Polish, so two Polish people involved in writing the article. And I want to tell you everything about it. All right, so my name is Dr. Mikola Rashek of Merogenomics, and let's get started. So the article itself is about the future of vagus nerve activation. So let's break it down a little bit. What is vagus nerve stimulation or activation? That's where you electrically send impulses to activate your vagus nerve. As I mentioned, the company that is sponsoring the video, they produce such devices. It's one of few certified devices for such use. We talk about this in the article, and we in fact mentioned that for that type of vagus nerve activation, there's only two devices that are currently certified for medical use in Europe. It's still not certified in other regions of the world, but in Europe, and that this is one of them. There's one more device that is certified as well in Europe from another country. So this is a new trend. So that's what vagus nerve stimulation is, and there's two types of vagus nerve stimulations that we address in the article. Number one is cervical vagus nerve stimulation. Now, when I say cervical, I don't want you to be thinking about cervix. In this context, it means in the neck. So why cervical vagus nerve stimulation? Why would that mean that it's in the neck? It's because the vagus nerve that runs through your neck is called cervical portion of your vagus nerve. And the reason why is because it comes from Latin word, which in Latin, in essence, cervix means neck. And currently, when you think of cervix and female anatomy, you can think of it as a neck of the uterus. All right, so that's the connection there. And vagus nerve stimulation via this portion of the vagus nerve in your neck, that's been approved already, including in the United States, for numerous conditions. It started with approval for treatment of epilepsy that is non-responsive to drugs. I will be making a video based on very interesting article I read from many years ago, which discussed, this was more than 20 years ago, discussed novel approaches of how to deal with such types of epilepsies, and they discussed vagus nerve stimulation at the time. So it will be fun to get that historical data as well as diet. And both of these are of great interest to me. So stay tuned for that. So cervical vagus nerve stimulation, that's how it all started. But it meant invasive. It required surgery in order for that device to be used and for the purpose of treatment of such condition. Since then, this type of approach for treatment via implantation of the device inside your neck, and this device would literally surround your vagus nerve inside your neck. It's been approved for other conditions as well. One notable example, another one is depression. I did a great video on that very topic as well, and there's some really phenomenal and promising, exciting results as well. Since then, I can tell you that these devices have been pushed towards non-invasive approaches. The reason why is because, of course, number one, it carries fewer risks for the patient. Number two, there's technological advances, and of course, it's patient preference as well, right? Because it's much easier to deal with. And the devices that have now moved forward are ones that allows you to stimulate your vagus nerve via skin. That's called transcutaneous activation. And there are now also devices, including approved devices via stimulation through the skin via neck. And this has moved even further towards the device that I'm going to talk about today, which is transcutaneous auricular vagus nerve stimulation. So transcutaneous, I already mentioned, via skin, auricular meaning via ear. And that's what the article is all about, comparing these two approaches and why the auricular approach is gaining traction, gaining interest. And to summarize it, in essence, it is because they are much safer and they're much easier to use. People prefer it because you can easily use it at home. And it's the article mentions as well that this is a fantastic approach for treatment of what appears as for treatment of many different chronic conditions. So this is scalable, and it very likely we will see continuous rise in use of such devices. And we mentioned that most likely we will see increase of use of such devices when it comes to as an adjunct therapy for already approved approaches. And I think this is probably the true future of this technology, is that we will be using it in conjunction with other methods, because the data so far suggests that when you use vagus nerve stimulation along with other standard treatments, the effects appear to always be better. And the same thing was observed as well when it comes to epilepsy. And again, I will be mentioning all of this in that future video. This has also been observed with depression. And again, check out this large video I did on use of vagus nerve stimulation for treatment of depression, how using vagus nerve stimulation in conjunction to approved methods such as basically drugs, then the outcomes appear to be even better for the patient. So that's the background. So auricular branch, we talk about also why that is. And I've already explained this in great detail in one of my recent past videos, where I compared the anatomy impact of stimulating your vagus nerve via neck portion versus ear. And the big difference, to summarize it very briefly, check out that video. It's really great video. I loved it, obviously. And it was immediately after that video that the company suggested, hey, Mikolaj, would you be interested in being a co-author in this article? Wonderful opportunity for me. I was really excited. But the concept here is this: when you activate your vagus nerve inside your neck, which is either implanted or via skin, you are activating nerve fibers of the vagus nerve that go from the body to the brain, as well as from the brain to the body. And what we really want to be activating are the fibers that go just from your body to the brain. These are called afferent fibers, afferent pathways, if you want, afferent highway. And those are the ones that we want to be targeting. But when you target via the neck, you can target both the afferent and the ones that go from your brain to the rest of the body. Those are called efferent. And the potential problem with that approach is that when you target the efferent ones, those are the ones that once your brain processes the information that the vagus nerve collects and sends to the brain, it then performs certain action. So those efferent fibers are what can be referred to as motor fibers. So they will affect certain muscles. And as a consequence, when you inadvertently also activate these, you can have certain consequences of that action. So in this case, that can lead to unwanted side effects, and that can affect the performance of your vocal cords, your throat, and your heart. And some of the side effects can include even arrhythmias. and you can start coughing. That's a common one, and your voice can be affected. And this can be problematic enough that it even leads to patients dropping this type of treatment for themselves. So that's because the cervical vagus nerve can target both those afferent and efferent fibers. Now, the one method where you activate your vagus nerve via ear, you only target the afferent pathways. So the ones that go from your body to the brain. So, and this is what you want. And with you activating your vagus nerve via tragus, that's all you're going to achieve. And as a consequence, you dramatically reduce the likelihood of any side effects. It's not that you might never have side effects, and I'll talk about that in a second, thanks to very interesting information that was sent to me recently. But typically you don't see any serious side effects. And that's another really interesting aspect of this article, is that it allowed me to get access to some of the latest information from the company. Some of this includes even information that hasn't even been yet published in a peer-reviewed journals, but some of it has been published, and I will talk about that as well in the future because it's very, very interesting. But the take-home message here is that according to the company results, despite the fact that the device has been used thousands of cumulative hours on a variety of different patients and people, they don't record any serious side effects. And this is the reason why we claim that this is going to be the future of treatment via vagus nerve stimulation, is precisely because of these reduced complexities that we might be seeing. And the trend shows this. Now, let me now tell you about this interesting case that I ran into recently. So what happened is someone wrote to me that they had unusual side effect from using the device. And they mentioned, hey, I was using it as directed, and surprisingly, they experienced tachycardia. Now, tachycardia means increased heart rate. The reason why I was really surprised to hear this is because vagus nerve activation is supposed to achieve exactly the opposite. It's supposed to be slowing down your heart, not increasing its heart rate. That's what is supposed to happen in normal, healthy individual. So I was really perplexed by that, and I really wanted to study further as to what could possibly answer that. And in the video that I made about the activation of the vagus nerve in your neck, I even discussed that the authors who did experiments on pigs, they saw as one of the side effects tachycardia, but they even mentioned in that context this was only because they were also doing this inside the neck and they co-activated another nerve. That's what they believe caused it. So when you're activating afferent fibers, so the ones that go from your body to the brain, you are not supposed to see tachycardia. A normal healthy person is not supposed to be observing this. So I did further research because that one was like, why would that be? And when I studied this further, it turns out that indeed this can occur, but only under condition, so far in scientific literature, if a person also experiences autonomic dysfunction. Now, what does that mean? Autonomic dysfunction, that in essence means the autonomic nervous system is not working properly as it's supposed to be. So what is autonomic nervous system? This is the system that vagus nerve is part of, and it controls your behavior of your body that you're not even thinking about. So this is like your breathing, like your digestion, and so on. And this type of autonomic nervous system, it can be dysregulated in some individuals. And this has indeed been observed in the past in people who, for example, had postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So when you get up and you get dizzy and your heart rate increases. And the reason why is because such individuals, they can have not properly working autonomic nervous system. So all of the literature suggests that if a person has vagus nerve stimulation and they experience tachycardia, it's most likely a sign that a person has dysregulated autonomic nervous system. And why would this happen to an individual is because, and I explained this also in great detail in another video where I discuss vagus nerve in aging, and I explain in detail what happens is when you activate the vagus nerve or when you shut it down. You can do this rapidly via breathing. For example, when you breathe out, you activate your vagus nerve, you slow down your heart rate. When you breathe in, you activate the flight and fight response, which is the sympathetic nervous system. And all of this is co-regulated instantaneously, without you even thinking about it, to regulate your heart from moment to moment. And normally, under such circumstances, such as during breathing or during movement, all of these factors are playing together at the same time to properly regulate your heart rate. And parasympathetic system, such as the one governed by the vagus nerve, it's supposed to slow down your heart. So it gets extra turned on to achieve that. And at the same time, it quietens down the sympathetic nervous system, the fight and flight response, in order for that not to interfere. So if someone has a vagus nerve stimulation and a side effects of tachycardia, which is that increased heart rate, it means that their parasympathetic system was either not responding properly. Another possibility is that parasympathetic system maybe responded properly, but then the sympathetic system was either still too hyperactivated or it wasn't inhibited properly as it was supposed to be. So those are another options. Another possibility is that these systems are working okay, but the I think it's called barrel reflex, which is the instantaneous reflex that measures the pressure of your blood, is supposed to send that information to the brain so that all of this continues to be still coordinated properly, so that you don't have too slow of a heartbeat or too fast of a heartbeat. And if that reflex is not working properly, again, that could lead to this surprising side effect of tachycardia from vagus nerve stimulation via ear, which is not supposed to happen in a healthy person at all. All of these suggest autonomic nervous system being dysregulated. So one more possibility that I also looked at is that, remember, these devices stimulate the vagus nerve via your tragus. So this part of your ear right here, that lip right there, I'm pointing to the right ear, but technically that device is used on the left ear, so I was supposed to be actually pointing to this one. And there are other nerves that also go through that portion of your ear, but they are all sensory nerves, so they have nothing to do with controlling your heart. They sense the temperature and so on, or pressure and so on. So they completely separate information. In theory, one could argue that that information is also sent to the brainstem, where your vagus nerve also sends information, and some of that information is all coordinated together, and as a consequence you potentially could result in tachycardia. But again, that would only happen if the autonomic nervous system is dysregulated and that information is not happening to properly, that coordination of information is not happening properly there. Another symptom that this person mentioned was that they had also sleep apnea as a consequence of that. And sleep apnea is also signature of potential issues with autonomic nervous system. So now you had two symptoms that suggested that really what was happening, this person used the device, but the tachycardia, this turned out to be a biomarker of this person having hidden autonomic dysautonomia, hidden autonomic dysfunction. And that could include because of, say, long COVID. That could also And this is something that is of great interest, obviously, to me, as well as post-vaccination syndrome. There's a lot of overlapping symptoms there. This is one of the reasons why I started studying vagus nerve in this great detail, because of the potential impact on the autonomic nervous system by such a condition as like long COVID. But it could also be that postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, POTS. It could even be autoimmune conditions or chronic fatigue syndrome. So there's variety of potential issues. So in this case, if you ever use the device, such as the one I'm talking about in this video made by Parasym, if you're healthy, you will not have tachycardia. And if you do, that is a potential signature that something is wrong, and you might consider looking at further information with your doctor about the possibility that the autonomic nervous system is not working properly. But what I also wanted to tell you is that one of the questions that was posed by this individual in the comment was, well, it would be good if people had some ways of being able to test this before they end up having such a side effect. And by the way, I added to my list of observations that I collect from my users. So I get to update the table for you, or not the table, the graph. Let me explain the graph. What we're looking here is, you can see at the bottom of the graph, there are different biological events that are of interest to us, and you see bars that are in pink and in blue. So in pink, it shows you what people were trying to improve, and the pink bars show you where people stated that indeed they observed the desired effect. Right next to that, to the right of each pink, you might see connected to it a blue bar, and the blue bar will tell you where they saw the opposite, or they didn't expect it, but they saw this such a side effect or lack of benefit. So if you see a pink bar and there's no immediate blue bar next to it, it means the opposite effect was never observed. Or if you see a blue bar and there's no immediate pink bar to the left of it, it means that the opposite effect was observed in an individual without ever seeing the benefit. So that's what the graph shows, and I included these observations because, well, they're real. And now I see there's biological explanation for this, and I studied this information. I might make another video just to explain the scientific details behind that, from the scientific literature behind all of this. But then how could you potentially be looking for this in order to avoid experiencing this side effect by using vagus nerve stimulation device of any kind? And I see only two possibilities that how could you do this at home. Number one is you could measure your heart rate variability. And I made a deep dive video on heart rate variability. And as far as I understand, this is the best way of actually measuring the performance, the quality performance of your vagus nerve. And if you have low heart rate variability, this could mean that you might have that sympathetic portion of your autonomic nervous system, the fight and flight response, being too active. And that could be a signature or hint that perhaps you might see such a side effect. Having said that, I do want to preface it that, of course, one of the benefits of activating your vagus nerve is the improvement in your heart rate variability. So that's one way you could see that you could potentially test for that. Another one, and I'm not sure how viable this is, but another one possibility could be is that you could measure your heart rate, just regular heart rate, and then you could practice breathing to activate your vagus nerve and slow down your heart rate. And I explained that in one of the videos in the series, the recent series I did. So check that out, how you can use breathing to activate your vagus nerve specifically. At that point, your heart rate is supposed to slow down. So if you practice this breathing technique and then you remeasure your heart rate and your heart rate increases, this would be a paradoxical, not expected effect. And this could also be a potential signature that maybe the autonomic nervous system is not working properly. So those would be my only two methods that I can think of the top of my head. Clearly, on top of that, you can also aim to look for diagnosis related to autonomic nervous system dysfunction, such as postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, the POTS. If you have heart conditions, that could also affect that. And I explain a lot of that information in the video dedicated to how you're supposed to be using this device from Parasym. So there are certain contraindications, and your recent heart issues could be one such an event as to why you potentially might not be using such a device, because you might see such a paradoxical event such as tachycardia, increased heart rate. So I thought this was super fascinating that this even happened to a user, and I was able to study that information, and I wanted to share that with you. And this also brings me to another point that I wanted to discuss with you, which is that the company not that long ago shared information with people who talk about their devices, about their recommended way of how to start using the device. And because I've never mentioned that before, this is a good opportunity to let you know. And this is also interesting. They propose specific way how to use it for the first 5 days. So the first day, they recommend to use it between 15 to 30 minutes in the evening, okay? Then follow that again, the same approach, second day. Third day, they recommend to do it in the morning, 15 to 30 minutes, and then also in the evening, 15 to 30 minutes. But in the morning, they also stipulate that don't do it during the workout or soon before workout. So make sure there's a gap between you using it and the workout, just for those first 5 days. Then on the fourth day, again, you switch to the evening, and then you can use it between 30 to 60 minutes. And then on a fifth day, again, you do morning and evening between 30 to 60 minutes. And they also mention after that, you are free to use it how you want. And you can add it throughout the day as well, besides evening or morning. And you can use it during the workout as well. But they suggest that you do not exceed 90 minutes total per day. And the reason why is because the clinical studies being done with this device, that's the typical duration. So that's where they have the clinical data or the information on, and they suggest stay within that time frame. And if you want to use it for longer periods of time, definitely do it under medical supervision. All right. So I wanted to share that information with you because it was also a good opportunity in terms of sharing that information with you because of what happened in terms of that recent information I got. One more thing that I wanted to let you know, let's go back to the article that I co-wrote. We, of course, talk about the wide spectrum of potential uses of vagus nerve activation. And that's the reason why I'm so interested in this approach, because it's being investigated for mental health, neurocognitive conditions, it's being investigated for cardiovascular issues, it's being investigated for autoimmune conditions, metabolic issues, as well as inflammation. And if you think about it, everything I'm telling you, a lot of these are a lot of the symptoms we've been discussing in my videos post-pandemic. And indeed, long COVID has a lot of these issues in many of these patients. And of course, there's other conditions such as that POTS I mentioned as well, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia. A lot of these symptoms can be shared between these conditions. And as I mentioned, the article brings attention to some of the latest research in which that company, Parasym, is involved in. So I wanted to briefly tell you about some of it. The one that really captured my attention is on POTS. I will make a separate video on this topic, but I'll just give you a super quick hint. In the individuals with POTS that they were using it, it improved that tachycardia, meaning it reduced tachycardia in those individuals that that high heart rate. It improved their heart rate variability as well. But the part that I was really fascinated about is, again, it reduced their autoantibodies, meaning antibodies that attack yourself, your own body components. And this is now a second article that I have come across where this was observed. And I'm very fascinated about this. And I really want to eventually figure it out. How does vagus nerve activation reduce specific unwanted antibodies in your body, these autoantibodies that could attack yourself? And so stay tuned for that video as well. And what's really fascinating is that the other studies also showed that not only was it safe in individuals with POTS, but in numerous other high-risk individuals. So people with, for example, heart failure. And the use of this device seemed to be very, very safe. So that's the mantra that is being repeated over and over in my studies. I've now made numerous videos on this topic for how the data appears to suggest that it's a very safe method. And the article is finished, it wraps up in terms of what the expected future is. So as I mentioned, there is a pattern of approval, and this approval means the invasive methods were the first ones to approve for implanting the device inside your neck. Then this has followed in the US for approval of those transcutaneous devices that can activate your vagus nerve via skin. And very likely, we expect that, of course, the auricular vagus nerve activation will be the future because of the safety profile and the fact that it only targets those afferent nerve fibers, the ones that go to your brain, and not vice versa, the ones that are going to the body from the brain, which can, if you stimulate those inadvertently, can cause these unwanted side effects. And I sincerely hope that this company will be one of the ones that get to see approval for specific conditions in the future. That's one of my hopes, is to see that. Another one I would love to see is to see this company publish long-term usage data. That's my own personal biggest minus still for not just this device, but for any medical intervention, is that long-term data is often very difficult to obtain. So I would love to see that information. And of course, we also mentioned some of the issues that are still outstanding. And one of this is that the parameters of how the stimulation of the vagus nerve is supposed to be used for different conditions, that's not standardized at all. So published literature, it's all over, different authors publish different things, and that has not yet investigated in terms of, can we standardize that for specific conditions? So I can tell you, for example, Parasym has standardized it specifically for activation via the auricular vagus nerve, right? And there are ways, potentially there could be different ways of doing it for different conditions. So that we still need to figure out, and also determine what could be the predictive factors of whether a treatment for any of these conditions might be working, such as, say, person's age, comorbidities, or the status of their autonomic nervous system. So that's the wrap up on that article. Check it out. It's not too long, and I hope it's written in a language that is accessible to the majority of people. Like, as I mentioned, I'm very, very proud to be able to participate in this article. Very, very cool information. And what else can I tell you is that, well, that I hope that this will not be the end, and I'll get to write more science articles in the future. And again, if you are being persuaded by this type of information and are interested in this type of device, the link is in to get the device at a discount is available at a video description below. So check that out. And again, what can you do to investigate prior to even starting? Well, you could maybe look at your heart rate variability, or that mini experiment I mentioned, and if you see a side effect such as tachycardia, well, that might be, as I mentioned, potentially a biomarker that there's something off with the autonomic nervous system. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up right here. And please share, please like, please comment. This is how we grow. And obviously I am absolutely in love with this information. So I want this information to spread. And also, last thing I'll mention, please check out my Patreon channel as well, where I post additional content that does not make it to YouTube as well. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.